Welcome back to ESBR Boxing's YouTube channel. It's me, Noel, here giving a quick reaction to the huge news that broke this evening that Ben Whittaker, the very divisive, controversial and charismatic light heavyweight, has signed a long-term deal with Eddie Hearn's Matchroom Boxing. Yeah, massive news this, to be honest. No matter what you think of Ben Whittaker, this is big news. More so as well because of the unexpectedness of the news. So yeah, I'm going to be giving my thoughts on this move for Whittaker, what it might hold. And yeah, just giving my thoughts on what might be next for Ben Whittaker now signed for Matchroom Boxing. So yeah, before we get into things, please make sure, do not forget, if you're not doing so already, drop a like on the video, first of all. We'd really appreciate it if you could subscribe to the YouTube channel at ESBR Boxing and follow us on all social media. So yeah, let's jump into it. Announced about an hour ago now, just over an hour ago, that Ben Whittaker has signed for Eddie Hearn's Matchroom Boxing. Really surprising news this. As I said at the start of the video, very unexpectedly. It was only a couple of weeks ago that articles were coming out saying that Ben Shalom had planned for Ben Whittaker to headline a boxer show in November, this coming November. Not long away now, and of course, Boxer not long signed a new television deal with the BBC, so we were expecting to see Ben Whittaker headline on the BBC, but now, only a couple of weeks later, he's gone to Matchroom Boxing. Huge news. I'm just so curious to see what the last couple of weeks have been like since that article. Was it as sudden as a break? Was it as sudden a breakup as both men, going their separate ways within the last 2 weeks? Was it something that was building even before that, even in spite of the articles that came out saying Whittaker is going to headline for Boxer in November? You'd imagine there had to be some sort of a rift even before that, and in spite of those stories that he was due out in November. But yeah, penny for Ben Shalom's thoughts now. I'd just love to know how this played out, what the breakdown was between Ben Shalom and Ben Whittaker, and how quickly kind of a deal manifested between Eddie Hearn and Ben Whittaker. Ben Whittaker said in a statement that, it very nearly happened when he was turning pro, of course, former amateur standout. And he actually said in a statement that he wanted to sign for Matchroom Boxing. When he was turning pro, it didn't materialise, but it has now. So yeah, very curious to see. There'll be rumours circulating and swirling about the relationship breakdown between Shalom and Ben Whittaker. And yeah, Ben Shalom was going to be asked about it incessantly now. You'd imagine constantly. He's lost his biggest draw, his biggest character, his biggest kind of money maker to Eddie Hearn, to his rival Eddie Hearn. So yeah, it's sure to leave a very, very bitter taste in the mouth of Ben Shalom, and I'm very curious to see if he comes out with anything to shed any more light on this story, this particular story. But yeah, whether we'll ever know is another thing, but what we do know is Eddie Hearn has tied him down, and in that statement released by Matchroom Boxing tonight, with the announcement, Eddie Hearn has waxed lyrical about his new signing. He's called it the greatest signing in boxing today, which is some statement. Ben Whittaker gets a lot of flack. He really cops a lot of flack. People either love him or hate him. More people, you'd say, even really hate him, to be honest with you, than love him. But I don't mind him. He gets flack due to his style and his hands down, real drunken master, Emmanuel Augustus style. Cocky, arrogant, charismatic, as I say. Some people say, that line between his charisma and his cockiness has been well crossed on numerous occasions, and maybe it has, but it's entertaining. It's entertaining. There's no doubt about it. People tune in to watch him, whether they tune in to watch him win or whether they tune in to watch him get beaten heavily. People tune in to watch him, and that's what it's all about. And that's what Eddie Hearn and Matchroom Boxing have signed. They've signed somebody that's going to get eyeballs on him. Somebody that's going to draw money. Somebody that can be a headliner heading into the next few years in the light heavyweight division. And yeah, Eddie Hearn very pleased, as I say, calling it the greatest signing in boxing today. And yeah, the question now will be, I suppose, what's next for Ben Whittaker? As I mentioned numerous times at the start, we all saw the articles. He was meant to headline a boxer show in November. Now, whether he's still going to headline in November, who knows? Also in the statement that said there would be a press conference on October 27th to further explain this deal between Matchroom and Ben Whittaker. Now, whether it'll just be explaining the deal or whether it'll be announcing a fight on the 27th, who knows? But yeah, we could still see Ben Whittaker headlining somewhere in the Midlands or up north of England, towards the end of the year, November, maybe late November, early December type of time, who knows? Or maybe it'll end up on the Monte Carlo show, that was just announced today for December 6th. Ben Whittaker could now end up on that card. Eddie Hearn has promised it's going to be the biggest card they've ever put on in Monte Carlo, so yeah, he could end up in the Principality, who knows? But yeah, a lot of interesting options, of course, coming off a tremendous performance in the Liam Cameron rematch, a fight a lot of people thought he'd come unstuck in after the chaos and the farce that the first fight turned into. Silenced all doubters in that one by comfortably dispatching Liam Cameron in that one, and now it has to be a step up again. People thought after the first Liam Cameron fight that he'd be kind of moved slowly again by Boxer, but he's with Eddie Hearn now, and hopefully it's another step up. The appropriate step up would be, he's not. He holds a good ranking with the WBC and the IBF, I believe, but you want to see him in with kind of domestic British level opponents, British title fights. The likes of a Louis Edmondson, very winnable fight for Ben Whittaker for the British title. Maybe a Dan Aziz. Dan Aziz has just won last week in Nigeria. Dan Aziz, Ben Whittaker, I think could be an interesting fight. Aziz undoubtedly passes best, but definitely a name. And if Ben Whittaker could do a job on him, and stop him, he would make a statement. So yeah, the likes of Louis Edmondson, Dan Aziz, I think it'd be fascinating fights. And then you look further afield, to his old stomping grounds of boxer. You've got Joshua Buatsi coming up in a big fight against Zach Parker. You've got the likes of Anthony Yarde in a huge fight against David Benavidez, and Anthony Yarde against Ben Whittaker, I think, is a very good fight to make. Yarde, unlikely that he's going to beat David Benavidez, let's be honest, but even coming off the loss to fight Ben Whittaker then after that fight, I think would be an interesting way to go. I might even fancy Ben Whittaker in that one, to be honest with you. But yeah, those are the names I'd like to see him in with. The likes of a Dan Aziz, Louis Edmondson, Brad Ray, Shakan Pitters, those type of names, the good quality domestic level fights that he has every chance of winning. He's not ready for world titles yet. You look at the light heavyweight scene in Matchroom, and Matchroom currently hold all the aces there, with Dimitri Bivol holding all the titles, but he's a long way off. Well, not a long way off, but he's definitely a long way off challenging for world titles against the likes of Dimitri Bivol, or maybe even a Callum Smith. Of course, Callum Smith mooted to face David Morrell early next year. It's too early for a Ben Whittaker Callum Smith fight, I'd imagine, but you never know. Maybe if Smith comes through that and Whittaker gets a couple of quality wins under his belt, that could be 2026, late 2026, who knows. But yeah, fascinating options, fascinating news this is. No matter what you think of Ben Whittaker, he's signed tonight for Matchroom Boxing, will be under the stewardship of Eddie Hearn. Moving on from Boxer, as I say, very interested to see what Ben SHALOMS thinks of this, and a penny for his thoughts right now. But yeah, very interesting development this evening. That was just my quick reaction, quick breakdown to that news. Let us know what you think in the comments. How shocked were you by this news, and what do you think the future Ben Whittaker and Matchroom Boxing partnership looks like? Let us know what you think the ceiling is. Get involved down below in the comments. And as always, don't forget, as always, we'd really appreciate it if you could drop a like on the video first of all. Subscribe to the channel if you're not doing so already. It only takes 1 second. And follow us on all social media for great content on a regular basis. So yeah, like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. And yeah, speak soon.